Yay!
Hi, all, and welcome to another microChicago Roundtable. We have a very special roundtable today as microChicago comes up on our Rhino Fest premiere. But just real quick, a quick recap for folks who don't know what the roundtable is. Just part of our ongoing series here at microChicago to introduce you to different artists that we collaborate with over the course of our L cycle or otherwise. In this instance, our first live, fully fleshed out production, given the opportunity to do that through Rhino Fest with Curious and Prop. So yeah, I don't really think I need much more of an intro than that. I'll let the intro happen with you all. So without further ado, let me introduce co-artistic director and founder Curious Theater, Jenny Magnus.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Dakota. Appreciate you. Yes, Jenny Magnus, co-founder and co-artistic director of the Curious Theater branch. Important distinction because there's a Curious Theater in Denver. And we founded as the Curious Theater branch of Maestro Subdrum and the Whole because we had a band at the time and I wanted to do theatery stuff and the band did not want to. So we founded the Curious Theater branch of Maestro Subdrum and the Whole. 1988, we incorporated, and we've been producing all original work since then, with a few forays into a Pinter here and there or a Carol Churchill. Yeah, the Rhino Fest started almost at the same time, a year later, basically. It came out of the Bucktown Fine Arts Fest, and we were asked to produce some theatery stuff around that, and that was in Bucktown. We were in Wicker Park at the time, and we just kept doing that year, and then I think the next year, and then we rebranded it, sorry to use the word, re-amplified it as the Rhinoceros Theater Festival, and we used that rhinoceros based on Salvador Dali's idea of rhinoceric being something really, really big. So that was where it started, and we were in Wicker Park, moving around between multiple venues. It started out pretty big right away as soon as we decided we were doing it. And it's, sustained through the years. It's not a moneymaker, but it's something that we believe in to support, platform, and amplify other people's work, since we believe in original work and new work. That's our whole mission, and wanting to have this venue or this platform for people to produce with low risk to them. So we, pay all the rents and all the insurances and all that kind of stuff, and people just have to pay for their own production. So it's very low financial risk for the people involved, and they can just, make what they want. There's no judgment, no, needing to read scripts or anything like that. Yeah, and I am a co-curator of that and do the admin for the Rhinoceros Theater Festival. I've been the acting managing director for Curious now for a couple of years, as well as being the co-artistic director, but mostly Curious is pretty group. We're pretty non-hierarchical. I mean, there's the mama and the papa, but there's really, like, we all make decisions as a group, and it is an ensemble. And the nice thing is that we do grow as an ensemble. We've added new people. We just added our friend Breville O'Reilly recently. So we really are trying to bring new people into the ensemble, because I personally do not want founder syndrome. I don't want to be, hanging on to the old folks. I want new young people coming in with new energy and new needs and new desires. And so that's what I hope is happening. That's my brief introduction. Any other questions you want, Dakota? Or
Not quite yet.
okay, should I introduce?
Yeah, Stefan.
Venerable. Okay, so I would like to introduce Stefan Brun, who is the co-founder and co-artistic director, well, now artistic director of Prop Thtr, which is even older than Curious Theater Branch, and also co-producer of the Rhinoceros Theater Festival. Take it away, Stefan.
Hey, thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Dakota. The Prop Thtr grew out of the old Columbia College Theater and Music, and the production that was all sort of a commuter college in the end of the 70s, 80s when I was there, and the project was the Prop Thtr, and the name had thousands of different ways you could take prop like only a nerd would do. And the THTR was in order to avoid the incessant dialogue that continues to this day about whether in English you spell theater with an RE or an ER at the end. And we've sidestepped that now for nigh to half a century. And Scott Vigil, who was the courageous one of the two of us when we began this thing, and who insisted that we needed a place and we needed to be outside of the academic institutions, or in our mood of the times, any institutions, I think extends into the Rhino Fest. The Rhino Fest started, a good friend of ours who's a part of the Prop Thtr now, Charles Pike, was a part of something called the Theater, the Reconstruction, and Curious Theater Branch. The Theater, the Reconstruction, and Prop all were on a little piece of 1300 West North Avenue in a time when that was not at all a cool place to be, and indeed quite run down. And nearby was the Chicago Filmmakers. The whole area was a good place for artists with no money to pay very low rents, and things were going in and out. And the Bucktown Arts Fest, that actually Charles Pike and the Theater, the Reconstruction, who meanwhile don't exist anymore, so they're rarely part of the story, brought to that block on North Avenue this Bucktown Arts Fest, along with Bo O'Reilly from the To Be Curious Theater branch, and with Prop, who had a place called the Garage and a big old empty lot next door to it. It started as a neighborhood festival, and it started in a time when community was kind of a dismissal, amateurs, and professional and high art was still something you weren't wishing would go away, but was wanted, and is a language that has disappeared. And nowadays, where community is the highest value, we celebrate this, meanwhile, 36-year-old Rhino Fest that grew out when Curious Theater Branch took it from the North Avenue hub of anarchy, and in their Lunar Cabaret, a beautiful blue building alongside Lincoln Avenue for years and years, and spreading it to other venues at times. Rhino Fest went 2 months. It was September and October in the fall, and it would be in Rogers Park, and it would be downtown, and it would be up at the Lunar Cabaret, and God knows where else, and over at the Prop Thtr when we had one. And there would be shows all over. So it has grown. Then Prop got that building at the turn of the century, a little after on Elston Avenue, with 2 theater spaces in it. And after some cajoling and the Lunar Cabaret moving first to Rogers Park, it moved, curious, in with the Prop. And the Rhino Fest for quite a number of years became, again, sort of a community we made in a building where things could be playing at the same time. We could cross program. There was a lobby with a certain atmosphere that we cultivated, and Rhino Fest became kind of about that. And we would still do guest things everywhere. And at the same time, Richard Katofsky, because you wanted that brought in, had a festival over at the corner of Sheridan and Sheridan, which you can only do in Chicago, he had the Angel Island Theater, and he did a festival called the Abby Hoffman Died for Our Sins Festival. And we loved it. And where Rhino Fest went anything from 1 to 2 months long, and we were programming multiple locations, and people put on 1.5-hour self-produced shows within the framework that we funded and supported and organized. What he did is staged a massive weekend where from Friday through Sunday, without hardly breathing at all, without hardly stopping at night, and without a whole lot of administrative hoo-ha, which is what the Rhino Fest hopefully, and this festival, the Abby Hoffman Died for Our Sins, which has now become the Yippiefest, had in common. And you would come in on a Friday and you would start perhaps drinking, perhaps not, but you would certainly stay up and party throughout till like 2 or 3 in the morning, come back early for a whole nother day of theater. That the Saturday was always where it really went strong, and went to like 4 o'clock in the morning. And then Sunday, there were still some dribblers And always at the beginning and the end, Richard Kotofsky would play this amazing scene that he always played, ritualed from the 1968 convention when a bunch of yippies were trying to decide how to get involved in political uprising of the moment, which brings us to 2025, doesn't it?
Does.
And I'd like to introduce Christine Marie, who a number of years ago, doing this very Rhino Fest, when we were still on Elston Avenue in that 2-theater space, came along, involved herself in all the many ways that I think, which is Prop Theater's best quality, that we are always just that theater for whatever happens to be there now making work. And she was making work, she was helping people make work, she was helping us organize our box office and our administration. She was doing what you do with the Rhino Fest, producing things yourself and collaborating with people. And here she is today working, I think, still with the Yippiefest at the Chopin Theater.
This is true. Hi, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm gonna just go ahead and put that all on a poster. Appreciate that. So yeah, so I'm Christine. I showed up in Chicago in 2018 at the Yippiefest, and I asked Frank, who's doing what? And he said, I'm doing it. He said, do you want help? Let me help. Let me do. And so I started doing. And then that weekend, I know for a fact on that Friday that I left the Prop Thtr at 4:50 in the morning. I got there at 9 a.m. and I was taking out the garbage when Stefan came up behind me and went, what are you doing? And I went, cleaning. And he went, all right. And then later told Frank, hey, where'd you get her? She's good. So then I just, everybody that came up during the Yippiefest that was on the board of either Prop or Rhino, I was like, hire me. Just hire me for stuff. I do it. I do this.
Okay. You sure? Yeah.
And that is because my whole kind of background is in theater festivals. In fringe fests, in new plays, in whatever kind of like art all night that you can get into, that's where I really thrive. And Bad Theater Fest in New York, I've done kind of a national sort of tour of a bunch of these festivals and figuring out how to give the performers what it is that they need through it. But I wouldn't have that ability if it wasn't for the Jennies and Stefans and the Curious and the Prop that made this structure happen. There's an infrastructure that is not even just distinctly Chicago, but it doesn't exist anywhere else in the shape that storefront and new works get the chance to expound themselves, you know? And that is a lot of what I want to be able to support in theater, in whatever it is that I can do. So that's where I thrive at the Yippiefest. Like Stefan said, I probably don't sleep from Monday until the next Monday. In fact, during a Rhino Fest, Stefan paid me $20 to go take a nap upstairs once. Because I fell asleep during like the 9th Screaming Lesbian show. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the Screaming Lesbian shows. I'm generally one of them. But it was just, I was exhausted. I had to shut down. But we have a supportive community that does understand, hey, take a sip of water, have a hit, just be somewhere else for a second. And that's cool, you know? And what I would like to see more of is more acts being supportive of each other. Which the way that the parties happened until 4 a.m. since COVID don't happen anymore. It's not, you know, and how do we interact with those audiences? And I think that even just doing this roundtable is accomplishing quite a bit of that. So thank you for opening up more pathways so that we can have this communication.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you. I kind of like I expounded earlier, like I just think it's kind of listening to all of you talk a little bit, like it's really true that like how like small businesses, right, kind of act as the backbone for the economy, right? Like festivals kind of act as that backbone for the storefront or the non-equity scene. And then everything kind of seems to like, I think Jenny, kind of to your point, you'd mentioned something about like bottom feeders in ensemble. And I actually really, really appreciated that because I'm just like, yeah, we're chugging along and yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say that Christine said something, people who just want to do. And it's something that I've thought of my whole life. Before I even became what I consider to be an artist, I thought of just my brother and I would talk about, we're just making stuff. We're just making stuff. And I never took the word artist very seriously, but I think this idea of just do stuff, just do it and not wait to be chosen, not wait to try to enter some grand stream that somebody told you was the only avenue towards making stuff. And I've been doing a lot of teaching of professional practices in all these different contexts in the last couple of years to young people. And one of the things I always say is like, well, you can go the route of waiting to be chosen and train yourself towards that, or you can just decide I am the agent of my own destiny and I'm just going to do stuff and make stuff. And I'm going to find the people who are also doing that because they respect the idea that it doesn't need an infrastructure, it doesn't need a huge institution behind it. And the affirmation actually comes from the satisfaction of doing and making. Like there isn't all that much glory, but except for the fact that you've done it and you've made something.
Jenny, I'm 1,000% on this team. Somebody asked me during Yippiefest, what is my title? Because they want to hire Christine Marie, but they need to put that in a grant and they can't just write Christine Marie. How do you judge that balance between what sort of labels that you require to be able to do the work and just doing the work, like, and showing the capability of doing the work?
Well, we've struggled with this for years. And honestly, I've had to train grantors over the years through my grant applications. Stefan will get on the train of like talking about language and how language is really important. And yes, in Curious Theater Branch, at some point in the past, we got on, we started labeling ourselves artistic director, co-artistic director, things like that, because non-hierarchical consensus decision-making ensemble was really a hard hairball for the grantors to swallow. So they needed a couple of labels like that. But just because you label yourself that way in grant proposals and stuff like that doesn't mean that that's the way you have to operate. And I think, for example, one of the things that Curious and Rhino have been doing in the last few years that we have found to be incredibly effective. Now, I'm not saying the work gets spread out evenly. I mean, there are the hardcore workers and then there's the people who don't do as much. But the fact is we use this committee structure where it's like, take responsibility, be on the committee to do all of the listings, be on the committee to make the website look right, be on the committee to write the grants, be on the committee like that. And it spreads the work out because it's always too much for one person and it should never be one person, in my opinion. And it also spreads the responsibility and agency out so that everybody feels ownership, which is really crucially important in this kind of world when you're talking about making something non-commercial off to the side of the commercial world, not for profit, really genuinely not for profit. You have to find a way to get people to invest themselves into it. They have to feel ownership of it. They have to feel like it's of them. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they are not going to do the hard work because it is, a ridiculous amount of work for sure.
How do you give them that ownership? Because I feel like this is something that we struggle with in Yippiefest is they show up, they do the show, and then they disappear.
I do think I do think it's about speaking a different way about new work and self-produced new work than you speak about show business. And I think from all this TV and movies and celebrity magazines and whatnot, and the language of business that slowly in my lifetime crept up and took over the journalism, that I used to enjoy being more wide ranging, took over the universities where there used to be liberal arts, and everything turned into a show business with the accent on business. And I think people are so about business, which can be understood in times where there's a stressful feeling about being able to survive and afford the needs of life. It doesn't benefit theater. Theater is actually activism when you're doing new work. It becomes a business when something lands and when there's an audience paying for it in a reliable and predictable manner. But as long as it's activism, we should stop apologizing for not being activists and instead do activist work and then deal with it and speak about it in a language of activism where you support each other, where you discuss with each other, where you're creating something new. So I actually think we need to change how we talk.
Yes, and the language of activism has to include intersectionality. It can't just be dudes.
Well, that for sure. But just to your specific question, Christine,
Please.
one of the things that we do, and it's a hard nut to crack, and we have not cracked it. There are people who come to Rhino who show up expecting a staff to take care of them. They show up for their show. They never come and see any other work, even though it's all pay what you can, and they could come for nothing. And that is offensive to us, and we don't ask those people back. That's one way we deal with it. Like, we make it explicit at the beginning. Hey, this is like art camp. Don't just do your show. Be engaged with other people. I have to really try personally to not become the censorious woman of the committee, because that's part of my personality and I can get the big finger wag going. But the idea to make it explicitly understood that this is about supporting each other by going to see the work. I just did a big interview with Indivisible Chicago with the Lincoln Park or Lincoln Square branch or whatever. They asked questions, how is the economy affecting theater now? And one of the things I said, they were like, well, what can our listeners do or our readers do? And I said, go and see small, oddball, weird theater in a strange space that is not comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just go to where you know you're going to have a nice dinner and a nice seat. Go to a place where it might be too hot or the seat is uncomfortable, and go support original work. That's what we can all do. We can go see the work. I don't see why that is such a hard sell, but it is because people don't want to be uncomfortable. I think COVID really was the big elephant step, like people don't go out the same way they did. But we can encourage that this is, as Stefan said, this is part of being engaged in a community which is inherently activist in its nature, being part of something and not just an isolated person in the back by yourself, or just having an online life. This is about real people in space together in real time. And so encouraging people, don't just see your show, like stick around, see what's before you and what's after you, like be part of it.
Well, and even that before and after space, I think, is really important, where we had a poster contest for, like, if you send us the poster for your show, we will give you 3 free passes for anybody for the rest of the weekend, right? Not one was picked up. They still participated. I gave 9 different companies awards.
I don't know what to tell you. It's a hard sell, Christine. It is. You just have to keep finding a way to talk about it using, language like Stefan says.
And I think part of it is to stop apologizing. We sort of have grown up over years of there actually being high art, there being well-funded art, there being universities in the United States, there being the wonderful art that used to be more subsidized and is ever less subsidized in Europe. And we all sort of felt like the tramps. But now, people are looking for somewhere to be in a room with other people, actually, to not be behind a screen, to be where people are actually making real community with each other, where they feel secure and where there is respect and where one can disagree without feeling like one's safety or one's ability to see one another again is threatened. The kind of community where democracy can be practiced and where can learn it again. We have less than nothing to apologize for.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree. And I have to say, when I talk about this stuff to younger people, I feel it's the hope to me. It is the hope that we have to offer as older people to younger people, is that the means of production is in your hands. You can just decide, I'm going to do something.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even have to be good. You know, honestly, try it for God's sake. You know, take a risk. And I do that with my creative consulting private practice. I do that at the School of the Art Institute. I do that through now Chicago Dramatists. In every relationship I have with younger, more upcoming people, or with people who are more nascent in their making, I just encourage, like, be part of it. Make it part of your life that you go and be in a room with people. You know, they talk about this thing about heartbeats synchronizing when people are in a room together. That is not something you can have on Zoom.
But I
you
have
know?
to add something. Just a slight note. There are many quite well-funded places that claim to be fostering new work, and they would do well to look to link to communities like Rhino Fest and like small storefronts have taught over the years, and not hide behind high art pretense from far away.
Totally. I mean, I can't agree with you more. We've discussed.
Even as a community, some things that I learned at the theater conference in 2024 that was here, the Theater Communications Conference, is what people would love to have is childcare. More women would go to the theater if they had somewhere to put their kids. If we did more community activism for the audience that was there, who was willing to show up for us, then it would change everything. And I know how many of us are teaching artists already have our CPS certifications that one person could stand there for 2 hours and watch somebody's kids.
You know, there's a show in Rhino this year. I think it's called Mother Speak or Mother Load. I'm sorry that I can't remember, but Aurora Tabar is the artist behind it.
Yes, I
And
stage managed for her before. Right.
yeah, and their like not writer, but like their blurb for their show is a greatly lengthy thing about wanting to actually do the real work of building community, which is about childcare, and it is
Mhm.
about accommodating people. And I think, you know, those things are crucially important. And like accessibility, you know, we've made it an absolute deal breaker now that if space is not accessible to everyone, we aren't going to rent space. You know, that's just something curious. Has
Dakota, how
decided,
obsessive was I at the Chopin about everything in the back being accessible? You put it back where it goes. Here is the entrance. If you need to get in this way, you make it like everybody was safe. I made sure that certain dressing rooms were blocked off at certain times. Like there was everything was accessible.
It's also
yeah,
one of the reasons, the arguments for the Rhino Fest, which is an administrative nightmare because it goes on for a long time. And the reason it goes on a long time is because, frankly, there is a bias in the new work world, even more than in the showbiz world, and the showbiz world also for young people, and the sensibilities of young people and youth culture anyway has had a huge influence on how we speak again. And so things like the Yippiefest, which was wonderful when you were young, the Rhino Fest was such a welcome thing for mid-career people and for people who could not necessarily be in the presence of a constant party, who could not necessarily keep their jobs if they stayed up all weekend, who could not necessarily have their children or their special needs friends or their accessibility challenged colleagues really taken care of. And so while the one shouldn't be denounced, it's good to have, and this is why I love Chicago, the panoply of different ways that not just the young, but also not just the old, good God Almighty, can show their new work. And I think the Rhino Fest is particular in that it always has had some days on Sundays where there are things where families are involved. When it was at the Prop, we had another room where you could go to, and we made use of that at times. And even in the interim, when Prop produced at the Athenaeum, it was a more grown-up show, and we had special announced. It was about a place where people brought their kids for childcare, was the play. And so it was arranged to have, as part of the publicity for the show, please bring your kids, and we're going to have someone there to play with them in another sanctified space. This isn't, you know, and going that far actually helped us build our audience. So it is a strategy, not just a virtue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, but also everybody wants to be paid for the work that they do, which is totally fair, right? But that means you have to schedule into the budget for a sign language interpreter. You need to schedule this into the budget for whatever needs need to be met, you know?
Well, I
And
think labor equity is actually an existential threat to all the theater that we all make, because
oh,
there is no possible way to pay people for what they're actually doing. So one has to come up with strategies to address the very real and very ethical reality of being paid for your labor
yes.
in the art world, but also recognizing that, you know, we're talking about micro budgets. Speaking of micro, you know, like Curious Theater Branch's yearly budget is like literally $50,000 to produce all the work. And that's nothing to a lot of these places. But so one of the ways we've dealt with that, and it only works a little bit, it doesn't really fully work. But what we've agreed to in Curious is that we just pay everybody the same. That's our way of thinking about equity. So if everybody gets 200 each, then that's true for the artistic director and the writer and the actors and the tech and the everybody.
And what
And
that does is it detaches the language of, oh, I work more, or I work less, from us filling the need that everybody has when they're taking part in this. Tomlinson Ford, a friend of ours, a son of Keith Ford, said a sentence that I keep holding in my head, where he said, in the new work world, in the world we're in, you not only have to pay people for their work, you also have to make them like themselves and feel that the work they are being asked to do is worthwhile. You got to do both, because you can't pay people, as Jenny just said correctly, what they're, if there is such a thing, you can't find it, but making it worth their while. And that means, again, undoing the language where there's a playwright and they're God and everyone else is a little slave who meekly hushes around and is subservient and shows their subservience in
I
some
want that
awful
world.
little pretense, you know. And instead, we need to be honest about the fact that, as the viewpoints have taught us, to really make live theater, you need an immense amount of talents, and a genius would only get in the way of any good theater.
Yeah, so I think that labor equity thing is just, it's something I write about in every grant application, really trying to explicate and find new ways, new language to communicate to the grantors who, of course, are, they have the money and you want the money and you're trying to get them to give you the money. And, you know, it never fails to amaze me why something like Rhino or Yippiefest, I don't know what your guys' grant history is or whatever, but it's a little bit of a hard sell for us. You know, like they don't really get what we're doing, even though I've explained it and explained it, because it is non-commercial, and that the metrics of success are all about growth. They're all about, you know, like how you get more audience, how you are put, you know, and that is not our metric of success. I mean, we want more, of course, but we are not focused on that as the only metric of success. Like we talk about Rhino bliss, like if people going to the Rhino come out feeling elevated, like, oh my God, I'm part of some cool thing. Like, no, you know, the 20 people who saw this thing with me today are all in a state of kind of bliss of like, I was in on this cool thing. That is one of the metrics of success for us. But,
Even our
you know,
community brought forth this cool thing.
yeah, I mean, and so we have to we're basically trying to remake, you know, 450 years of capitalism through genuinely being non-commercial, not just saying it, you know.
Well, and there's this great thing called, it's an RCA animate about motivation, where if you pay people not just like not too much, just enough that they are okay, and then give them time to work on their thing, it's going to be an awesome thing. You're going to have innovations. This is how an evolution happens, right? Like giving people the emotional bandwidth to say, hey, you're doing all right. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. And I think that's going back just to this festivals specifically. What's nice about a festival context or the Rhino in specific, and we have tried to grow this over the years, is like you have very, very experienced people who've been making stuff for many, many years, decades, and people who that maybe this is their first thing they've ever made. And like, can we bring those people together, help support each other? We've been doing auditions, for example, to help people populate their shows. We've been doing all the admin of that because we have the connections. You know, we are deeply ingrained in the theater community and we have the connections. And there are people that, you know, don't know anybody. They just wrote a thing and they have the will to do it. They just need help with the connections. And then there's people like Red Twist who are doing a special grant that you, if you are unaffiliated and have no institutional, you know, no ensemble, no company, nothing, you can apply to get money from Red Twist Theater Company to produce your work. And I think that's just brilliant. I mean, because there's a lot of, that's why Rhino works, is because it's about unaffiliated people. Most of the people that are involved in Rhino Fest, now it's not true of 100%, but it's like 75%, do not have companies. They don't have 501c3s. They don't have an infrastructure of affiliation that holds them up. They are doing it through their own will, and they need the support of our 501c3 that will pay the rent and the insurance and all these things. And we are very explicit about that. Like, we're, you know, you have to make your work. We're not going to make it for you, but we'll come in if you want us to. We'll be an outside eye if you want us to. We'll help you figure out how to use the space properly if you want us to. And we will take the risk because we're paying out the money to begin with. We're going to take the risk. So if nobody comes to your show, that's sad for you, but it's really sad for us.
Well, let me add one thing, that and Red Twist is a wonderful thing for you to bring up, because Prop Thtr was actually a founder a quarter century, and Red Twist is a new associate member of the National New Play Network, which has added a whole nother dimension to producing new work rather than just showbiz in the United States, because now there's a filtering system, a Facebook for new plays for professionals who work in the new work business, and they can exchange. And Red Twist is a part of that National New Play Network. And so people who are producing new work, even in some isolated place, even where they only get, as Jenny says, 5 or 10, 20 people to their show, where maybe a community is very proud of what it brought forth, but there isn't much audience here, it is possible that a trace of that, the description of it, which people are looking for something like that, causes productions of that work to go up somewhere where no one has ever been to Chicago, but where they find out about it through this online connecting system for new plays. There's all sorts of things that are happening for new work on a regional, not New York, Edinburgh, or Los Angeles bound system.
Well, but I think that's important too, because I think what I was trying to get at with what you have created, and there is regional theater and there is community theater in other places, and then there's, you know, extras in film, but this middle ground of new plays and storefront and everything doesn't have the infrastructure elsewhere. Say like Pittsburgh, there's not a middle place. So they're combining 3 of like the biggest theaters in Pittsburgh right now.
That is structure.
I saw that.
That is a structure.
It is a structure, but those aren't storefronts.
No, right. They're professional buildings, and they have, right.
Right.
Because there isn't community theater anymore. There isn't. The regional theater is deeply threatened,
Pittsburgh on
and
this.
community theater is all the people I know are saying at the level where we were able to pay rent and fund and pay people, we're suffering. So either people are getting together and forming new consortiums, or we need to stop speaking as if things were as they were 10 years ago, because they're not.
That's one question I want to ask you, Christine, and I'd like to have a conversation around this. You know, as the person who's got my finger on the pulse of the money of the Rhino Fest, which is not true of everybody, but I do. You know, we're suffering. We are definitely going to squeak through this year and don't know what next year can look like. And it's rough right now, you know, and we can't be as big as we want to be because we simply can't sustain that. And so my question is, one conversation we're having in the company is, do we communicate this? How do we communicate this to the audience? Do you know, like, try to say, do you value this? because it's pay what you can. And our average up until pretty recently was around between 12 and 15 per, and we're trying to raise that up a little bit. And we've got some strategies underway, which are too boring to talk about. But like my idea was, let's fucking print a budget and an 18 by 24 laminated piece of paper and stick it up in all the theaters, and people can see what we're really getting at, what we're really up against, as it were. You know, like this is how much the in-kind labor really is, actually, in numbers. You know, everybody was like, no, no, that's too, please, woman of the committee, please no. But like, what are the strategies to really talk about the cost of something without being censorious or like naggy or, I don't know, demanding? Or
Well, I
Cody,
think
what do you,
kind of speak to like what you've been talking about is just like having a conversation about it, and like and doing the conversation of it in kind of like what we're doing here, but like just continuing to have the conversation. Because I know, like for me anyway, in my experience in the 8 years I've been here, like up until about 2020, in the advent of We See You White American Theater, where they were like demanding, you know, put out your budgets. Like, we want to see where the money is going. Like, I think for me, up until that point, I just didn't think about it, because it's like, you know, you have your hierarchical structure, and this is the money people, these are the artsy people, and they talk and they fight about who's in charge, and, you know, but you don't know where the money goes necessarily. Like, it's broken up between all these different, you know, aspects of building a show, but like, you just, as an actor, you know, in a particular production, you're just not thinking about that. You just want to get your own paycheck. But like,
right?
I think if you're able to broadcast that and like have a sustained conversation, like, you're almost going to kind of force people in a way to like have to understand or like engage with that. And it's an important thing that needs to be engaged with. And then I
I
think
mean,
that,
I think
go ahead.
one of the sad things about being 36 years old as a Rhino Fest, it feels ubiquitous. It feels like, oh, it's always been there, it's always going to be there. And the amount of labor and sweat and, you know, desperate pain that goes into it, because we're all aging too. You know, it is not easier for us to do it now than it used to be. And it's like you're up till 4 a.m. Like, it's not happening with some of us, you know? So yeah, it's an interesting question. I remember a couple of months ago, David Serted from Hell in a Handbag did an interview somewhere, and he spoke explicitly about his salary as the artistic director and what costs were and stuff like that. He was saying, like, where are the people? We need more people to come to this particular show because of this, you know, and he was really explicit about it, actually. And it was a little slightly shocking. And like, I had the frisson of like, oh, that's very interesting. To be explicit about that is very interesting. It's sort of like your dirty underpants coming out, you know, like, but I think there's something to it. I'm not saying, like, our whole thing is like, it's pay what you can, but hopefully the people who can pay more would pay more to subsidize the people who can't pay more. So we've come up with some strategies around ticketing around that. But Stefan, you want
Well,
to weigh in
yeah,
on that?
yeah. One of the things that I've been working on for a number of years is saying, if these economic forces are changing, if the cost of paying people and paying rents and paying production costs and paying for publicity and paying to give people the opportunities and the quality of work that keeps it at an acceptable level has gone up, and if our ability to network and interact with each other and face each other since COVID has gone down, then there is a danger of these so wonderfully identifying storefronts and small operations becoming fiefdoms in silos, who no longer have reference to what's going on out in the world, and who don't have the cojones to get together with one another and with people who are at least somewhere different from them but doing a similar mission, work through the hard work of disagreeing creatively rather than as cancelers, and get together and go to the funders who've been asking for this for a decade, that we go to them with consortiums and getting togethers That's why Rhino Fest is popular, because many different, otherwise small little groups get together to work on something larger that has the heft and the leverage to ask for funding. The funders need to see something with leverage. And nowadays, there's so many little companies, they could easily get together. Our language is at fault, that people think they lose rather than if they gain, if they show that they can work together and collaborate. They've lost ownership of something.
Totally.
What's your thing, Christine? How do people come to Yippiefest? Like, what do they pay a fee to get in, or what do you do? What do you
So
guys do?
it's $20 for one day and $30 for the entire weekend. Artists get a wristband that they can get in free for every single show for the entire weekend.
And how do you get the people into, like, what are the people who are, you just program it, you curate it,
Yeah,
and that those people are
And-
invited, and that's it?
pretty much. I feel like I'm missing something that you're
I'm
asking.
just wondering, like, how do you pay if you don't get any grants? Like, how are you paying for it?
Oh, everything is out of pocket between Frank and I. We don't make a cent, and everything else goes to charity. Every dollar that we pull in, and we made $50 per charity each more than we did last year. Which is still like, it's $50, but it's still $50 more.
Oh, hey, fuck yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I love to see, it's that's interesting. It's just, I think there's lots of different ways to organize these things as long
But
as we're creative about it.
You're correct in that if you post the budget, if I were to post this budget, the canceling that would come out of like, well, she needs to make what she's, and what was community theater, what needs a trailer? We're not going to say his name, but it was that attitude of, you need to hire more people that need to be able to do this and blah, 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 or make it functional. And in the same way of, you have all of these storefront theaters, you two didn't have them. There's all of this push with Waitress being a real restaurant, right? And all of this immersive theater. How many back alley Chinese restaurants have you played? Because I know I've done a live man's funeral. Okay? Like, there are places that we can put ourselves that don't need the black box.
The rent, right?
Right?
That's
Or the rent,
that's been
or
a
the
big
whatever.
topic of conversation. Yes, big topic for us. Can we do more alternative space that's less expensive? Stefan, go ahead.
Well, I just would like to say that while that has always been how new work has ever gotten done in what otherwise would be the stifling strictures of a system that requires a proven product, and we're making something new. However, what is happening in the development of our economy is that means that only people who are independently wealthy can take part in making culture, and I'm not okay with that.
Okay, so here's where I think Yippie and Rhino are doing exactly what you're describing. We're putting the production in the people's hands of, none of us have money. None of us are independently wealthy. Look at my house. Does this look independently wealthy to you? No. But we are giving the opportunity to build it, right? Like this. Honestly, most of the work that I do for the rest of the year comes from the fact that I do Yippiefest, because people that I work with see that I'm working. And that is the proof of concept before we even get to what box you put it in. Right?
Yeah. Hey, Dakota, it's 10:59.
It is
I don't know.
about 11 o'clock. Yeah. And it's actually a really good segue. Because, God, I feel like we could just do a whole series, and I would love to do a whole series about just chatting about this. But I think just to kind of give us a segue into our micro bites, and then I will let you all get on. Thank you, Jenny, with your days. But I think it just speaks to, I think, how, at least for me, speaking to it, like, knowing that each year there is a Rhino Fest or that there's a Yippiefest, and that as someone who has been fortunate enough to kind of forge an arm of self-producing, like, that becomes kind of the like Christmas, the theatrical Christmas of the year. It's like knowing, okay, great, I did this thing. I can chill for the winter, and when the spring comes, along with that energy, I know that I can look forward to a submission thing coming up, and that gets the juices flowing of like, great, okay, what am I going to do this year? What are they kind of looking for, and how can I start getting back into a creative space? And I think creating structures in opposition of the socioeconomic structures that capitalism that don't support what y'all are trying to do, and like each year the effort of like pushing up against that, I think, is just a very noble thing. And it's like seeing a white rhino out in the wild, right? That it's like, great, I got to experience this. And I think just also to speak to it briefly, like just the act of doing, you just have to take a step. And I think it's great to hear each of you kind of just echo that as someone who's tried to do more and more of that over the years.
Well, and I think you are at a precipice right now. Like, I came from here, these people, right? Like, I entered into this field, and here, like, we're sitting at the same table.
And we're talking about it. Yeah.
Made the table.
Oh, well, thanks for coming and feasting. On that subject, something we do love to do, and I just shameless plug, if you all ever want to do this again, please let me know. I would love it.
Yeah, great.
Hell yeah. But we like to do little microbite things. So this has a little bit of flavors from our L cycle, but also hopefully catered to some of you all. It's just our lightning round. So I'll just ask some really quick questions, just off impulse. What's the first thing? And then, yeah, we'll just kind of leave off with some self plugs. I mean, we all know kind of what we're doing in the next couple months, but we've all got some other things too. So without further ado, we'll go, I think, just alphabetically. So we'll start Christine, answer first, Jenny, answer second, Stefan, answer third. But without further ado, are you a pizza, a dog, and where's the best place to get it in the city?
Am I a pizza, a dog, and a place? Okay, so the dog is literally downstairs. I can get in and out of my house and back in one song with a Jimmy's hot, like, Vienna, and a whole, like, this many fries.
Ugh.
For less than $10.
No pizza, no dog.
No pizza, no dog.
Stefan?
I am a pizza. I'm pretty much flattened out and have all sorts of things on top of me.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
What was on the subject of consuming? What was the last thing that you were consuming creatively? Any kind of media?
Ooh. I was just handed a film script last night for somebody's pilot. So
I'm reading a fantastic book called The Dark Maestro. I can't see the guy's name. It's a novel about a Black cellist who has to go into witness protection and has a comic to fight crime called The Dark Maestro.
I was looking at a picture of the actor Charles Pike playing in something called Welts that's going to be at the Jarvis Square in Rhino.
Huh.
What's a standout festival production that you produced or were seen in or saw?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to say the Hunter S. Thompson show that I did for the Rhino Fest was pretty solid.
When was that?
That was 2019, it was beginning of 2020. It was right before the end. And I don't know, it was a good production. We had a lot of good actors, and even when I had to step in, it worked. So
God, I cannot remember right in this moment a single thing. It's just, it all blends in. I don't know. I've seen so many really great things and so many shitty things. It's just, It blends in.
Well, one of the things that I loved in the old Lunar Cabaret was that it was also really a music place. It wasn't just a theater by any means. It was maybe even more a music place. And in the Rhinos that I've been involved in through Diane Hem, the Labyrinth Club, Diane's work with Keith Fort over at the Prop Thtr, I've been able regularly in Rhino to be a part of musical productions and dance productions that sort of widen the scope of how we think about new work. And it's mostly been jazz and sort of pop and what is in our crowd. And I love that this year Keith Fort is bringing to the Labyrinth Club a country show with over 7 or 8 vocalists. And it's not only country, it's also Western.
Ooh, hell yeah, I have to check that out. What is your favorite spot in the city?
Woo.
Or a favorite spot, not to have to be the favorite spot.
I mean, I spend a lot of time in dark matter coffee shops. That's true.
It's a good vibe.
Yeah.
God, I'm so boring and terrible. I love the garden across the street from our house, Drake Gardens. It's the largest community garden in the city. It's designated a community garden in perpetuity, can never be developed, and it's genuinely a community effort. It's beautifully wild, and they have vegetable gardens in the back, but our windows look, one of the reasons we got this apartment is our windows look right out at it, and it's just so incredibly lovely.
Let me interrupt real quick to add Shit Fountain. Shit Fountain's great. Have you ever been?
No.
No.
It's a gold-plated turd and it shoots water out.
Where is
Wow.
You can Google it. I took Rob there for his birthday as part of a scavenger hunt.
it? Oh, so good.
Sorry, Stefan.
Mine changes all the time, and Chicago really has become a place that I love. And I was just at a theater that Ricardo Gamboa was doing a production of right across from a gate that said Back of the Yards, the old stockyards. So right now, Back of the Yards and right that gate is my favorite place because they made theater happen where nothing is and just a storefront. And somebody's dad lived there and the kid is doing the theater.
So good. Because we're doing we're halfway through actually on our L cycle. What is your favorite line to ride, or what's your go-to stop?
Ooh, I mean, I'm usually popping on by there's a Starbucks and an Oro. It's North and Damon. That corner is Blue Line.
Gotcha.
We live right at the end of the Brown Line at Kimball and Lawrence, and I teach at the Art Institute, so I ride that train downtown. It's all above ground, and it's the most beautiful ride in the world. And it's just I love the Brown Line, and I really love getting on at the first stop because then you always get a seat 100% of the time.
Did I write about Kedzie? I think that's the one I did.
Shigado.
Yeah, Shigado.
Shigado.
And I guess I'm also on the Brown Line, but I like, and it's been my whole life, Cross Currents, the club that influenced me most and where I had my first job back in the early 80s was at the Belmont stop. And the Belmont stop, the Brown Line goes to, the Red Line goes to, and the Brown and the Red Line have had a huge influence. And there is a Belmont Blue Line stop that I'm at. So Belmont, all of the stops at Belmont have really, really been important to me.
I'm finding that as well because I take the Red Line to Belmont and then I'll get on a bus to go to the Artistic Home, which is right off the Belmont Blue Line. So I resonate. Fantastic. And also, Brown Line is the only line I've ever gone all the way around on. Because it is just so pretty.
I mean, if you have people coming from out of town and you don't know what to do with them and they're like not somebody you want to actually necessarily talk to you all day long, you just go on the Brown Line, you look at all the beautiful sights, you just ride that fucker around. It's so good.
So good.
I mean, one year a bunch of Pittsburgh playwrights got together and just rode the bus for 2 hours and wrote plays. And then we did them for a festival.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
We could do that.
I hear you.
After October 6th.
Yes. What was the last script or piece of text that you were working on, writing or reading?
Oh, so I'm currently in the middle of rewriting Brandy Loyal, Disposable Pop Star, Illuminati Robot. And there's going to be October 6th, a little EP version of it we're going to produce. So,
Oh yeah.
I have been looking at my script Open Wide, which I consider to be the best thing I've ever made, which is a fully sung play about dental ecstasy and the liberation that pain can bring, that I'm hoping to remount. And I've been looking at the script because I've applied for several grants to have money to remix an 8-channel soundtrack down to 2 channels so that it can be played in more conventional theater spaces. So that's what I was looking at yesterday.
Oh.
I'm going to
I'm
say
not bother
2
you about
things because I'm boasty. And one of the things is I am currently creating together with a physiology professor who's directing and doing Brecht at North Park University and is adapting Brecht's Antigone and has called upon me to help him with the class and the adaptation. And I was reading my part in a play for voices by Bo O'Reilly, That Ugly Thing You Might Do, that I think I'm going to be in. So both of those.
Me too. I'm going to be in that too.
What about you? What are you reading over there? Question man.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I'm going through, I've been trying to incrementally read things. So like something that I've found kind of as a self-soothing for my brain and my little anxiety OCD flare-ups. I'm reading a book, an encyclopedia of cryptids. I'm reading Suzanne Laurie Park's 365 plays for 365 days. I'm doing a poem a day from some old, 100 poems, greatest poems ever. And then there's this wonderful letter collection called Letters of Note by a guy named Sean Usher, which Letters Live does a lot of like live readings of Benedict Cumberbatch, Peter Dinklage, all those folks, Olivia Colman. But they're just really interesting letters of correspondence from like history. So there's like some interesting ones of like famous Japanese warriors writing goodbye to their wife because they know they're not going to make it back. Or like there's one in there, actually, I'll share it with each of you. Sol LeWitt, a minimalist artist from like the mid-century, wrote like a really amazing like call to arms to another artist, Eva Hess, who is having anxieties. And it's
I
literally
read
called,
that. That's tremendous. Yeah.
it's so good. It's so good. So anyway, those are just a few of the things. They're just really like, I think the first one is Queen Elizabeth sending her like down scone recipe to Dwight Eisenhower. They're just wonderful. So anyway, that's what I'm.
This American Life did a show some years ago now, a live reading that turned into the radio show of poison pen letters. And I read, I got a letter, an anonymous letter that was made out of cut out newspaper, like the letters cut out like a ransom, that was a hate letter to me and like kind of slightly violent or whatever. It brings back the memories. Sorry.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
I was taught that all writing is epistolatory and that we've sort of forgotten that with our instant text, but that writing the letter and the reason to write something down when it wasn't record keeping, all literary writing is epistolatory. So the letter is a really wonderful exercise. And I even tell people when we're doing writing and they're kind of stuck, is really, really imagine the person you're writing to.
Well, Stefan and my romance began as first in person, but then letter writing for years before there was email.
Aww.
It's such a beautiful thing that needs to come back. Just corresponding.
It's there. It's definitely there. You just got to do it. Although the post office is so unutterably terrible that you never know whether it's going to actually get to where you're sending it anymore.
Right. Ugh. Well, I'll ask 2 more. I got a couple, but I'll ask 2 more so we can get folks on with their day. Again, thank you so much for making the Sunday morning happen. But let's see. Of the ones that I have here, I'm going to ask three. Chicago theater is blank.
Alive.
Unique.
Hmm.
Rhinocerific.
Ooh.
Yes, on theme. Let's see. When you are not making, you are blank.
I don't know that I'm ever not. I don't know that is the thing. Because literally, I'm still waking up at night going, "Who is like you?" So like, my brain is still. I truly, I haven't had a chance to process the end of anything this past 3 weeks. Is the camp ended that I was teaching at the Wednesday that was the tech week for the Yippiefest, and then the Yippiefest started and stopped, and now I'm in Rhino, and there's just not a chance to kind of close the tab and compartmentalize it. That there's no point that I'm not making something.
I would say when I'm meditating, which is a very deliberate time in my life for myself to not do, but to just be. It's something that I'm working on very seriously for the last quite a few years. And I find it difficult to just be for sure. So that is the time.
Attending, when I am attending, paying my attentions to what is being made around me or what already has mattered around me, that is in a pulsation with my own making.
It's a pulsation with your own making, because all art is a conversation, right?
I like to think of it as a respiration.
Ooh, okay, sure. But then there's still a back and forth. You need oxygen and carbon dioxide.
That's correct.
Oh. And on the subject of needing air to move you through the world, what is moving you, to close us out, what is moving you to create in this moment?
Look around. What is the other option?
I would say that I've come upon an epiphany that I feel powerless in the world and full of dread and horror about it all. And it's crushing. So I've come upon the idea that I need to work on my personal strengths, my mental, physical, and spiritual strength. And so that's, I've been jokingly call it the summer of strength, but like really working on that if we're going to be in resistance, we need to not be weak. And I have felt weak. And so I'm really working on strength. That's what's moving me.
Leaning on what Christine Marie said, being, it helps hold me in conversation here and now.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you all again for, again, making time on this Sunday morning. It's amazing because usually I'm still waking up. So I'm glad to start my week with each of you. To send us off, in addition to the many Rhino Fests, you've both kind of mentioned being in one of Bo's shows, and then Christine being in Rhino Fest, my show, our show. What else do you got kind of tinkering or going on creatively, and where can folks come and consume that?
Well, of course, we're in the Rhino Fest, the micro plays. Honestly, like, I feel so good about them. I've said before, they're the Bechdel test. Pass.
Yeah.
There's so many voices in our show that are getting a chance to speak, and I think that is impressive. Like, and even when they are cartoonish or big, we're saying something important. And those will be every Thursday for September. at Labyrinth. And then after that, Brandy Loyal, Disposable Pop Star, Illuminati Robot is going to have his little premiere at the Burger Park space.
Sweet.
I have a private practice, creative consulting, and you can go to jennymagnus.com. I work with people of all stripes to further their artistic process, from people who are completely stuck but just have a germ of an idea to people who are actually fully realized, but they want feedback on what they're doing, writing, performing, producing, everything. So I'm in the middle of doing that. That's an ongoing project for sure. I'm also working right now on an ongoing project of singing standards with my collaborator, Justin Hayford. And the show we're going to do in the spring is based around the theme of the cold, bitter, or what is it? The cold, hard truth. So what we do is a theme where we put together a set of songs from the Great American Songbook and beyond, and just do like straight up singing, which I really like. And it's not band oriented, it's just the two of us. And that is a tremendously technical kind of singing. So I really enjoy doing it. It's very difficult and I really get a lot out of it. And I'm also going to be in Bo's play, his play for voices in January, and working ongoing on my own work, trying to re-up Open Wide and maybe start something new.
And Jenny's Song Evening will be at the ESS, which is a wonderful place that's also helping with the Rhino and has been a continuous location. It's a wonderful place to also go live, which you don't normally think of a recording studio as doing. And it's really reasonably priced, and they have really great engineers. So they get a pitch. Jessica Wright, Buha, Keith Ford, all the people, new and veterans, who are doing stuff at the Labyrinth Arts. For me, the Labyrinth Club, and of course the whole Rhino, but the Labyrinth Club is the location where I'm going to be hovering and bothering people and enjoying and attending. And there's so much good there, including Dakota Pariset with microChicago, which I'm extra excited because the living newspaper idea for an old Brechtian like me is a real satisfaction to see what that could possibly be today. And so I also Prop Thtr is producing Charles Pike doing David Hopchine's Welts at the Jarvis Square up in Rogers Park, and the Facility Theater, which is the biggest of all the locations where Rhino Fest is happening this year, just has such wonderful productions that I'm eager to go to them, and I mostly don't know what they are, which I think really recommends them. So Rhino Fest.
It's interesting to me that you say Facility is the biggest.
It is the biggest.
It is.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because we're little this year. What Jenny was
I
not
know
lying to
Jarvis
you.
Square is tiny, but compared to Labyrinth, I'm surprised that it is bigger.
Oh no, it's much, much bigger than
Really?
Labyrinth.
Much bigger.
Like 2 labyrinths easily. But yeah, and rhinofest.com, we're publishing a beautiful printed brochure, but the most up-to-date information will be at rhinofest.com.
Perfect, and we'll be sure to include a link in that in our description as well. So
And
go.
we'll put one on too.
Hell yeah.
And Bo O'Reilly, who's the other artistic director of the Curious Theater branch, has just released 2 volumes of his work. And there'll be readings from them. There's going to be an event at Women Children's First, and people should get their hands on these books.
They're beautiful, and so thank you so much, because I was in that work, and I'm in a couple of the readings. It's resurrecting reading plays that were produced back in the day, but that are included in this 2-volume retrospective.
This is work a community brought forth.
Heck yeah. Cool. I need to buy the second one, but I have one on hold somewhere.
Take your time. There'll be a third one.
Amazing. Well, I think that's a perfect way to go ahead and stick a pin in this morning. Again, open invitation. Anytime y'all want to gab again, this has been just wonderful. So thank you 3 again for making the time, for your openness, and just trusting the process. And thanks to everyone joining. When you get this far and you watch this, thank you. We appreciate your ongoing support, and just exploring the infinite space of small. And yeah, just again, thanks to all 3 of you for just creating spaces for people to come and do their work and just be able to put it out there and share it in themselves, and just creating opportunities for decades, literal decades, for so many different generations of Chicago makers. It's from this one, it means the world. So thank you all. And we'll catch you all on our next round table. We'll be sure to have a couple more before we hit Rhino Fest. And again, check out Rhino Fest, rhinofest.com, support some local theater.
Right on.
And I'm going